We're gonna have a scary good time, but I know Bob has better Halloween puns than I do here. All
Yeah.
right, let's get started. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trend webinar designed specifically for not community, specifically for 4 years and above. Um, we are going to gain some insights into labor market data for program evaluation and use data to debunk common myths about our programs. A few housekeeping items to get started with. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a place labeled Q&A. Please feel free to add your questions there. We'll get to as many as we can during the session, and we'll follow up later with you if we run out of time. My Gray colleagues and I will be available for chat during the duration of the session. You will receive a link to the webinar recording and the presentation slides in the next few days. Please look for it in your email. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bob Atkins, not only the founder of Gray Decision Intelligence, but also a program evaluation expert and a best-selling higher ed author.
Thank you, Marianne. And welcome, you mateys, to our Higher Education Demand Trends webinar. And that's the end of my Halloween shtick. So welcome, everybody. Let's talk a little bit about what a program evaluation system really is. Then we'll dig into student demand. We'll look at employment, and we'll share some new benchmarking material, and I'll summarize for you. So that's our agenda for today. When we think about a program evaluation system, it's much more than software or data. It starts with your mission. Typically, when we're working with folks, we expect them to bring that understanding, not just of the literal words of the mission, but of its real meaning to the institution. And that's an integral part of the program evaluation process. Then we look at academic factors. Are people passing? Are they progressing through the program? Are they graduating from school? And those and a variety of other indicators of academic effectiveness. You might want to check, for example, on external licensing exams, like the NCLEX exam for nurses, and make sure that your students are passing at the rates that you would expect. We take a deep dive into markets, and that's really where we kick in and bring in the most data. And on markets, we want to understand student demand, employment, competition, degree fit, and be able to give you a sense of whether the market that you're considering or that you're in is healthy or not. And finally, margins. And markets really drive margins. And when you're doing this, you're not really understanding your margins or analyzing your margins in order to realize profits and pay dividends to shareholders. We understand that all of you are not for profits. And that's what the reason you need to understand margins as a nonprofit is margins fund mission. And importantly, in academic portfolio analysis, high margin programs need to subsidize low margin programs that are critical to your mission. So those cross subsidies are normal and appropriate as long as the programs that you're subsidizing are in fact closely aligned with the mission. Now, I mentioned that it's more than software and data. That's because we have to engage the right people in the right process in order to make decisions, give them the information they need, and run a good program evaluation, really a process, workshops, however you choose to do it, in order to make good decisions. And then comes a missing ingredient in program supervision, if you will, and that is program management itself. And when we talk to our clients, very few really have systematic, frequent, ongoing program management processes. Programs tend to be managed episodically, perhaps every 2 or 3 years, often in sequence or in time for the accreditor. And honestly, with the pace of change in today's world, that's just not often enough. We need to be looking at our programs and evaluating their health and the resources they need, whether that's more or less, on a much more frequent basis in order to keep up with changes that are happening in the world around us. Then we have the ghost of AI coming in, and I think scaring a lot of us. And the question is, where does AI fit in program evaluation? And it has a role in planning it. If you want to create a project plan for program evaluation, I tested this today. It works. You can go in and ask and get about an 80% plan by just asking. I was on Gemini, but you could use ChatGPT or any one of a number of other platforms. It can also help you summarize findings from your research and create good, solid starting points for communication. I would say with AI in general, and certainly in almost everything I've seen around program evaluation, it's not ready to run on its own, but with a human in the loop, AI is a huge time saver and actually has a positive effect on quality in the sense that it tends not to miss things that would be part of a framework for analyzing a question like programs. It'll catch all those. It may not be very deep or insightful, but it's not going to be incomplete in terms of setting out the right issues to consider. Another key role for AI is prediction. And as many of you know, we've actually built a piece of software that can predict the potential size of a new program. And in fact, predict the potential of an existing program. So you can identify programs that are underperforming the prediction, which means they may have room to grow. And finally, as you go through your evaluation process, as you know, you can use AI to summarize the findings and create a draft of a report for you. Again, save you some time. And I think in Manage, we're beginning to work on things where we can create a report for you that you can get as a program manager and get a nice written report, a complete report out of our systems so that you can understand your current situation. We're going to be able to schedule those so you don't have to go in a system at all in order to get sound data on your program. It'll be delivered to you. I think the other thing we'll see with AI is alerts. Even predictive alerts. That is some system that will look at data and identify a problem that has not yet occurred and say, oh, this is likely to happen if you don't do anything. All that's very possible. And I think those are the kinds of enhancements I see happening to program evaluation over the next several years. I mentioned that we were going to look more deeply at markets and the 4 dimensions of that: student demand, employment, competition. Today, we'll really focus on student demand and employment. And on that degree fit side, one of the things we're going to be adjusting there is to call it more cost. We now have cost benchmark data, and you'll see some of that today. And that also is an integral part of evaluating a program, whether it's a new program where you can see what the potential cost is going to be for that program, how much will it cost me to teach per student credit hour, or an existing program to see if you're above or below the benchmark. Now, we turn to student demand. We use 3 data sources: IPEDS, enrollment, and Google, and actually international as well. And the reason we use 3 is IPEDS is very backwards looking. Most current data is from 2023, and students who showed up as completions in IPEDS really made that choice of major 2 or 3 years before they graduated, maybe more. So really good data in IPEDS. It's what students wanted in 2019, 2020, and that's feeling a little old to us right now. Still a good indicator of overall program size, less of a good indicator of trends because it's so out of date. Enrollment, however, is very good on trends and very complete. Comes to the National Student Clearinghouse, so it's a good, solid source, and that we can update 3 times a year. And Google, you can actually update whenever you want. We do it once a month and cover 900 programs. That's somewhat forward-looking and gives you a sense of what students are looking for who have not yet enrolled in programs or were even in college. So what does Google tell us right now? Well, let me explain how to read this chart. The gray bars are 2022 Google search volumes. The dark blue is 2023, and the light blue is 2024 search volume. So when you see a nice big bar like this, it's way above last year. That's very good news. And Google search volumes are up 56%. That is a very positive indicator as we look forward to enrollment over the next 6 to 12 months. And so, you see the total volumes there. If you wanted to use a very rough indicator, there are about 200 searches per student who enrolls in a class or in a program. So again, very, very rough number. It varies widely. The variance on that's actually larger than the mean. So there's more variation than normal in a data set. In terms of cost, we're up about 1% in cost of a search on Google. That's pretty good news. I would interpret that as essentially flat. So we're getting more searches at approximately the same unit cost. And this had been going up for some time. So it's nice to see it flatten out this year. What's growing out there? And now keep in mind, this is not the biggest programs. This is the fastest growing programs in terms of unit volume. So an increase in the number of searches. So searches for business administration and management are up almost 500,000 searches. That's the equivalent of about 2,000 students. Economics and econometrics up 327,000. And we have human resources up 246, investments up 227. So a strong showing by business-oriented programs, with accounting bringing up the rear of the business ones with 139,000 incremental Google searches. So it bodes very well for the business schools at your campuses. Now let's take a look at what else is going on out there. We have a certain number of reasonably random ones. Economics is one. We talked about law up 158,000, graphic design up 120,000, and psychology up 116,000. And last but not least, education has two entrants on the list. Education general with 182,000 searches, and early childhood teaching up 131,000 searches. So now you have a little bit of information. We want to ask you how fast you think enrollment grew for bachelor's degrees year over year in 2023, 2024. So last year, how much did it increase over the prior year? Let me give you all a minute to fill that in. I wish we could give a prize to the winner, but I don't have any way to deliver virtual prizes. Well, you can just know in your heart that you got this one right. All right. It's a pretty simple one. So let's close and see how we did. Okay, so we have some folks who think we shrank. Nobody thought we shrank a lot, just down 2 to 4%. Up 0 to 2%, 29% of our group. I'm sorry, down 0 to minus 2%. That's a pretty good 29%. Up 2%, 33%, up 2% or more. We've got some real optimists here, 19%. And then we've got some people who really think we blew out the lights, thinking we're up 4 to 6%, and that's 10% of our audience. So what did happen? Bachelor's enrollment at new enrollment in 2023 rose 0.2%. So for those of you who guessed between 0 and 2%, you hit this one on the head. It was up 2% last year. For those of you who are more optimistic, you were right, just about the wrong degree level. U.S. new enrollment in master's programs was up 4% in 23-24. I'm just so happy to see positive numbers here. You can imagine what it felt like to tell the world that everything was going down for a number of years there. It's really nice to see this trend, I think, solidifying of increased enrollment. And when I'm out talking to clients, I do hear more schools that actually had increases in enrollment last fall. Now, or I should say this fall. It's not universal, but it is out there, and I really wasn't hearing that much at all if you went back 2 years. So I do think this trend is reversed. I think we're seeing modest increases in enrollment. And I won't go on my diatribe today, but please don't buy into the demographic cliff. The data is wrong. There is no real link between the change in the number of people who are born and the change in the number of people who go to college. The less than 6% R-squared, for those of you who are statisticians, that is, that birth rate only explains about 6% of the variation year to year in enrollment. So don't blame the outside world. It's not, I don't think we're looking at a demographic tailwind, but on the other hand, it's not, it doesn't really explain what's going on in enrollment. If you believed that birth rates affected enrollment, you would believe that if you look back over the last 10 years, when the previous 18 years ago, before that, when people were born, what you'd find is that there was a negative correlation between the number of people born and enrollment in college. That means, in layman's speak, that the more people are born, the fewer people go to college, which doesn't really make any sense. And so that's why I say I'm not a big believer in the demographic cliff. It's not real. Second, not saying it's, by the way, as I say, it's certainly not a help, but there are many other things that affect enrollment in college. And the major one is the economy. And if the economy gets soft, people go back to school. So it's anybody's bet what the economy is going to do, mind you, but that's really what's going to affect enrollment. And that's what's been driving it down for the last 10 years as the economy, really strengthened coming out of 2008, 2009. The unemployment rate went down for 10 consecutive years, right up into COVID. And when the unemployment rate goes down, the number of people who go to college goes down. So keep that in mind. What's happened to enrollment is not that we had fewer people, but that fewer people chose to go to college. And that's the battle we've really got to fight. Second, even if the demographic cliff is true, I think it doesn't determine your future. Your future is much more dependent on the actions you take than it is on some sort of external trend. All right, so what are the fastest growing programs in terms of new enrollment? Now link these two concepts together. If you're not in the fastest growing programs, your odds of growing drop dramatically. Some 50% of growth takes place in approximately 5 to 10 programs. So if you're not in one of those programs, it's very difficult to grow. So keep that in mind. Picking programs matters a lot here. Computer science has added 10,000, almost 11,000 students a year for the last 5 years. Cybersecurity, 7,000 students a year. Finance, interestingly, up 7,000 students a year. Psychology also grew 5,000 students. And then we can see, got a couple of other health programs, kinesiology, health science, health services, both up around 3,500 students. And finally, exercise physiology in the health area up 2,500 approximately. Then we have some tech programs. I mentioned computer science and cybersecurity. We also have data analytics up over 2,500 students per year over this period. So very rapid growth there. And of course, business makes a showing too. I mentioned finance. We have business analytics up almost 4,000 students a year. You could argue that's a tech program. It involves things like machine learning. So it's right on that cusp between business and tech. Very popular program. Marketing management also up 4,200 students approximately. So these are your top 10 growers in terms of enrollment over the last 5 years. And again, the degree to which your campus grew is typically a function of how many of these you were playing in. Obviously, there are other factors as well. Now, at the master's level, we've got a different group of programs. Here, business is not as prevalent. And we've got some 22,000 students who signed up each year, incremental students for business analytics at the master's level. So truly huge growth in business analytics at the master's level. That's 100,000 students over 5 years. Computer science also up, but not as much of a surprise. Data analytics, very closely related to the business analytics, up another 7,000. We have a couple of other techs here, cybersecurity and information technology. Health made the list more substantially. We have 4 health programs: mental health counseling, physician assistant, counseling psychology, and applied behavior analysis. And with the mental health crisis on campus, I think we're going to see more and more interest in mental health related fields of study as well. And you do see that here with the counseling psychology as well as mental health counseling, excuse me. Oh, and I shouldn't miss our other economics, up almost 2,000 students per year. So good news for those of you who are teaching economics. Now, if we dig in, many of you ask us, give us some more detail. How can we understand what's likely to grow that's really not a program today? That's a new interest, something that we're not going to find in iPads. And where we go hunting for that is in Coursera, because courses can be launched in Coursera with very low cost. People do that. And in effect, it's this giant experiment. The beauty of it is we can watch the experiment. Coursera tells you how many students enroll in a given course, which is a wonderful set of headlights for you to be able to say, okay, what are people interested in? And is this the beginning of a program, or is this just a certificate I might want to offer? But you can see it happening out there and get effectively market research done for you to find out what people are interested in. Technology leads these lists. It'd be even more true if we went to some of the other massively open online program or courses, MOOCs. But in here, we see data everywhere, AI for everyone, foundations of user experience or UX, technical support fundamentals, crash course on Python, and introductions to data analytics. The data analytics coming back again. Look at the size of these things. 1 year, year-over-year unit change, 223,000 more people took Intro to Data Analytics than took it the year before. Here we have, gosh, 750,000 people, more people took Foundations of Data this year than took it last year. Really enormous numbers. Now, keep in mind, this is not the same as somebody enrolling in college. I went online and signed up for one of these things. I did the first class. I stopped. Actually, it was a very good class, but it wasn't a very big commitment. It was free, and I had a couple of other things I needed to get done, so it got swamped. I actually will return to that one. It was a course on AI. I think it was this AI for everyone, but when and to what degree I finish it, who knows? So don't think of these numbers as being equivalent to students enrolled. They really aren't, but they do give you a sense of interest, and they are just enormous. So even if only 10% of these people make it through a program, it's still 80,000 incremental students studying that subject in the last year. How to learn powerful mental tools, up some 280,000. Project initiation, starting a successful project, up 256,000. Intro to Psych, up 254,000. And this one used to be top of the list, the Science of Well-Being. It's dropped back quite a bit. Only 223,000 additional students took that last year. So let's take a look and switch over to jobs. Job postings have been tapering off. I'm sure all of you read the papers. The number of jobs out there that people are posted has been going down. Total employment has not. The unemployment rate is pretty stable right now. The economy is in very good shape. The data just came out yesterday. The GDP is up 2.8%. That's gross domestic product. It's a measure of overall size of the US economy. That is a very fast growth rate. I remember being taught in business school, I won't say when, but not yesterday, that the US would never grow over 2% again. Well, that was wrong. We've been growing over 2% for several years now. And I think part of that is the amount of investment going on in AI, but the total economy is, despite, no matter who you listen to in politics, the fact is the economy is in very good shape. Unemployment's at lows, real income is starting to creep up again. I think the good news for higher ed is that the unemployment rate is flat. If it were going down, I think it would be a negative pressure on enrollment in college. Right now, it's neutral. So when you're thinking about jobs and programs, and I apologize to those of you who've heard this before, but I'm going to keep pounding the table on this in the hopes that people finally get it. What people normally do when they tell you how many jobs there are for graduates of a program is they assume that graduates go into fields for which they're directly prepared. That's the traditional way of doing this work. It's the way labor market economists like to do the work. The problem is understanding how what a student has learned plays out in terms of their interest and the skills that they have for a job is very, very difficult. And the traditional direct prep analysis massively underestimates the career opportunities for graduates. So here we're looking at biology. And if you went with a direct prep view, biology does relatively well. You could call them the preppers, believe there are all massive 10 occupations that biology grads go into. Now, you may think that's not a lot, but it's twice as many as they think history majors go into. And as a history major, I do take some umbrage at that. But they say you can be a school teacher, you can be a scientist, you can be a biologist, and so forth down the list there of things you can do with a biology degree. Well, it turns out that when we analyze what biology graduates actually do, looking at data on some 40,000 graduates, we found they did not just go into 10 fields, they went into 715 different occupations. And when I'm doing analysis around academic programs, many of the numbers are a little squishy, and you feel as if you're within 5 or 10%, you're really doing pretty well. But if I have to multiply by 150 to get to the correct number, that's not good. And that's where we are with this somewhat archaic view of what people do with a job. Now, you might say to yourself, well, who cares? It doesn't really affect things. It has a couple of impacts. One, watch out for your widgets. What do I mean by watch out for widgets? Well, one of the things that's been sold recently to schools are widgets that go on your website, and you put them, a widget in with a program, and the widget, if the student clicks on it, will tell the student what jobs are available to them, given the degree that they're exploring. Well, what if they're telling your biology graduates that there are only 10 jobs, occupations available to them, and number one is secondary school teacher? I suspect that that's going to turn a lot of people off. If you do it for history majors, what you'll find is that 5 jobs are available to them. Wonderful jobs like museum guide. And I'm reasonably certain that turns them off. And by the way, history majors go into 470 different occupations. So I'd be careful of those. Go pound on them and see what they say. If they are indeed as broad as the data is here, and it shows you dozens or hundreds, you're in good shape. But if it starts to tell you 4 to 10, you're actively misleading those students in a way that's probably not helpful to you in the recruiting process. So September 24 actually had these are the professions, occupations to be literal, that had the highest job postings. Business really leads this list with 4 entries: general and operations managers, admin assistants, excluding legal and medical, human resources specialists, and marketing managers. We also have a couple of health jobs, actually one health job on here, RN. I find that a bit surprising. I normally think of health having a bunch of entries in this high job posting volume, but right now it's business that's really leading the way. We have a couple of tech jobs, computer user support specialists and software developers. And we have one other here in purple, our Halloween color, elementary school teachers excluding special ed. Now let me take a moment. I put these in red on purpose. One of the risks when you take the much broader view of what jobs people get, as we do, is that you're going to include jobs that don't require a college education. And while it's accurate that those jobs are things college graduates do, it would be misleading to say that those are really appropriate jobs for those graduates. They could have gotten them if they hadn't gone to college at all. So in this case, you can see 2 of the careers here that we're showing that bachelor's degree students get, or graduates get, are retail sales and customer service. I would say that's not a successful outcome for a college graduate. So when we report our data, we report not just a total number of jobs, we also report the percentage of those jobs that we classify as underemployment. That is a bit of a judgment call, but it does help to, essentially identify the baristas, the retail salespeople, customer service reps, and others that at least at that moment in time are really not successful outcomes for a college graduate. So you do need that offset, if you will. If you're going to be very generous with the jobs you include, then you have to take a look and make sure you're, and clearly identify the jobs that are in there that really aren't what a college grad's looking for. So what's growing fast out there in terms of job postings? Well, registered nursing. And this has been pretty close to the top of our list for a long time. And this list in rapid growth is dominated by health. Psych techs, ophthalmic lab techs, physical therapists, physician's assistants, all have over 1,000 incremental job postings. And nursing, is up spectacularly, up 7,000, almost 8,000 job postings. Keep in mind, many of those postings, have been around for a while. It's very hard to hire nurses now. Not quite as bad as it was during COVID, but still very difficult. So once those postings go up, they never come down. Software developers for applications in tech, only tech job to actually make this rapid growing list, up almost 4,000 postings. We have a couple of oddballs, other training and development specialists, tutors, and elementary school and special ed. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. That really, I should have called those mostly education, training is not something I normally see on here. And then finally, we have a couple of business occupation accountants and auditors, up by some 2,000 job postings. What skills are people looking for in those job postings? I found this interesting. I would not have guessed applied behavior analysis would be there. AI, sure, I would have thought that would be number one. Data collection, these two go together, AI and data collection. You can't apply AI to much of anything without data. So that's really been a shortage. And so a word to the wise here, and I think something that's going to emerge as more and more important as we go forward. In order to use AI for any sort of custom app, if I'm going to use it in my college and I wanted to read my policies and tell students, what the calendar is or what our policy is about handing in papers on time, I've got to be able to expose the AI to the data set. And now we're talking about data engineering, and that's what takes time. The AI system can read that data in a flash. Getting that data to a place where it's both secure and complete and organized in a way that AI can read it, that takes a lot of work. And oh, by the way, cleaned up. That's a lot of work. So as you think about AI going forward, remember, it's all about the data. The AI and machine learning is easy if you can just get the data in one place and get it clean. And if you'd like any help with that, this is my commercial announcement. We would love to help out in that field. We have the skills, and the things you can do with AI once you get the data assembled is really remarkable. Genetics is another hot field right now. Regulation, I'm a little surprised to see that as a top skill. Quality improvement, mental health, that's not surprising. Construction continues to be strong, though honestly in Boston, it's flat on its back. So I'm glad it's going well elsewhere in the country. Direct patient care, and finally, life support. So a few healthcare skills mixed in here. But this is an interesting one. There's some genetics programs out there, but not a lot of them. I think there are maybe a half a dozen in the entire country. So interesting that skill's becoming more frequently requested. Now we're going to do a big shift of gears and look at benchmarking data so you all can understand the kind of data that's out there to help inform your decisions about what you should be spending to deliver academic programs. First things first, what kind of data are we looking at? We're looking at direct variable economics. So what do we leave out? We're not looking at shared costs. We're not looking at department level costs, the provost time spent being a provost, not the provost, not the department head, except for the time they spend teaching. And we're not looking at indirect costs like facilities the president's pay. So keep that in mind. It's direct variable economics for instruction. Now, there are lots of other ways to count, and we can do overhead allocations, but you're not going to see that in this data. So how do you improve your unit cost of instruction? Of course, you might ask, what the heck is a unit cost of instruction too? So that is the cost to deliver a student credit hour of instruction. Not a credit hour, but a student credit hour, to teach one student 1 credit hour's worth of material. So if you want to lower that number, you can lower your cost of the instructor. That's one way. The other way is you can increase the number of credit hours taught in a given course. And given the range of instructor pay, it's actually much easier to reduce cost per student credit hour by increasing the number of credit hours than by changing faculty pay. So keep that in the back of your mind. If I have a course that has got 10 students in it and a cost of $100 per student credit hour, if I go to 15 students, and I do this in my head, I can drop my cost per student credit hour by 30%. So very hard to change faculty pay by that much. So keep that in mind. A big driver of cost per student credit hour is the denominator, the number of student credit hours. Now, what's in our benchmarking database? It's very heavily private, not-for-profit. So for those of you out there, we've got a nice, rich database for your schools. We've got a very good chunk of public 4-year and above, 32% of our sample, and 11% and growing of public 2-year community colleges. I would say for much of this work, though, comparing across these institutions is still valid. You want to be careful. I mean, obviously, it doesn't make sense to look at the benchmark for master's degree programs when you're a community college. But the cost of teaching English 100 should be reasonably similar across all these different institutions. So there are many cases where it's still a valid indicator, if not directly comparable to what you're doing. And what we found when we looked historically at our data is that student credit hours have been coming down relatively quickly. I hope that's about to change with the growth indicators we saw earlier, but they declined 7% over this period. Cost per student credit hour actually went up 6%. Fundamentally, what that means is schools were unable to reduce their faculty costs as fast as student credit hours declined. Now, looking at an exemplar within our data, one of the higher performing institutions, we found is that they were able to reduce their cost by 10%, 9% of it in 1 year between 2020 and 21. And then really almost to 11%, there's rounding in here by 2023. So they made a significant progress in improving their cost. They did some other things too. So if you look at this graph, the bottom is full-time cost. That is the cost of full-time faculty. The middle green is adjunct cost. And the top is non-instructional expenses of faculty. So what we see they were able to do is get faculty, especially full-time faculty, back in the classroom. The percentage of faculty time spent teaching went up from 67% to 71%. The adjunct percentage of time spent teaching went up from 6% to 14%, and 8%, an 8% increase. What shrank was non-instructional cost of faculty members. So one of the things I want you to keep in mind is when you're thinking about reducing cost, what is your lowest cost instructor? Is it an adjunct? Is it a contract faculty member? Is it a tenured faculty member? The answer is, of course, a trick. It is an unapplied, an underused full-time faculty member, tenure track or not. Because the marginal cost of getting that instructor back in the classroom is zero if they're not being fully applied. So keep that in mind. Getting your the full-time tenured faculty back teaching is actually the lowest cost form of instruction you have. And that means reducing that non-instructional cost. And I will say when we dive into this, what we find is a couple of big buckets of non-instructional cost. One of those big buckets is release time for all sorts of activities that faculty members have that aren't associated with teaching. That may be they're the dean, it could be they're on a committee, lots of things. What you want to watch there is, are they still doing those things? Does the committee that they got time for still exist? Because oftentimes that release time is given, but it's never taken back when the associated activity drops away. So that's one thing. The second thing is, when we do this work, what we find is there's teaching time, there's release time, and then there's, I don't know what the heck that is time. And it's just not accounted for, and it's usually millions of dollars. So if you're getting tight financially, one of the first places I would look is that release time and unapplied time. And that can save you a lot of money. And when you save that money, it has no impact on your classrooms. So you're not reducing the quality of education. You're not pushing more people into a classroom with the same amount of instructional support. So that's a little bit on what this kind of improvement means. They not only decrease the total cost, they increase the time faculty was spent teaching. I should say for all of you, this is not a research institution. Obviously, there are all sorts of other claims on time if you're a research institution. So what happened out there? When we look at benchmarking institutions or institutions in our benchmark database, about 2/3 of them decreased total instructional cost. What they did not do is decrease cost per student credit hour. So if you look at this chart, to the left is decreasing total cost. And if I'm in the top, even though I might have decreased my total cost, my number of student credit hours fell fast enough that if I'm up here, I didn't manage to reduce my cost per student credit hour at all. In fact, it went up. There are some who managed to pull that off, but it's less than 20% of our sample. So keep in mind that just reducing cost doesn't necessarily improve your unit cost. Unless you decrease it faster than the decline in student credit hours, or even better, find a way to increase student credit hours and primarily increase enrollment, or also increase the number of courses taken by your students. Is another important way to increase both revenue and student credit hours delivered. So if you look at the exemplar, they managed to pull this off. They decreased, actually maintained, the number of sections taught over the 4-year period. They crept up for a little while, and then they brought them back down again. During that time, they increased the student credit hours production by 49%. So big progress in terms of the number of student credit hours taught per section. So how do you tell if your costs are too high? Well, that is right where benchmarking comes in. Oftentimes, folks will compare costs from one program to another. That's interesting, but it really doesn't tell you very much because some things fundamentally cost more to teach than others. Lab programs cost more to teach than non-lab programs. Typically, music will be expensive because there's individual instruction involved. So comparing across programs is not really apples to apples. What you need to do is get out and be able to compare to other institutions in a pretty granular way. So here we can see theater arts, undergraduate, upper level, so 300 and 400 level courses. And we can see that, yes, the benchmark cost for that is very high. The 25th percentile, the green bars, is almost $200 per student credit hour. The blue bar is actually the highest blue bar on the page at $500 per student credit hour, and that's the median. And the red bar, which is the 75th percentile, is over $600 per student credit hour. Extremely expensive. But our exemplar here actually is even above that and substantially above that. Their cost per student credit hour for theater is running over $800 per student credit hour. So they're a good solid 20% over the 75th percentile. So looking at that, I'd say there's probably room to make some cuts in that program. And you can see in religious studies, they're massively over the benchmarks. The 75th percentile is at $225, and the actual for their institution is $600. Again, that's a way of flagging up something that has opportunity for cost reduction. And you can work your way through here. What you can do in our systems is actually aggregate all the costs above 75th percentile or whatever benchmark you pick out of the data set and estimate the savings that you would get if you brought those back to benchmark levels. So it's a good way if you have to reduce cost of figuring out, one, how much cost can I get out through efficiency, and two, where is that cost? Because you can break it down by department. And as you can see, all the way down to individual courses as well. So when you look at the exemplar institution and you take the highest cost areas that they had, what they managed to do is reduce the cost of those in almost 76% of those instances. So this is cost per credit hour, and from here over, that cost per credit hour came down, and it came down below the 75th percentile. So this 0 is effectively when the cost is equal to the 75th percentile. And you can see they got most of their programs back down to that level and many of them below. Still got some work to do though. They had a couple here that are well above the 75th percentile in our benchmark data set. So that's a way of keeping track. And just so you can read it again, this is cost per student credit hour change. This is difference from the sample cost, up being higher, down being lower than the sample. And these circle sizes are proportional to the size of the program. So, again, good progress here, still plenty of room to improve. Now, when you're managing costs, there are two sides to the coin. I think many of us have been focused on cost reduction for the last few years. but it's also possible for a program to be under-resourced. And if you look towards the bottom of this chart, what we see here, they're neuroscience, undergraduate, lower and upper. We've got a cost per student credit hour that's running under $100. Our mean is about 100 to 150. And if I look at this mean, it's well over 200, about 225. I look at that and say, we have a problem. We probably don't have enough instructors in these classrooms. And you can work your way back through the chart in that way and say, okay, where am I actually under-resourced? Geology, benchmark is around $180 per student credit hour. We're down under 50. That's an awfully large gap that you probably need to fill. So benchmarking cuts both ways. It both identifies areas where you may be spending too much, but it also helps you identify areas where you may be under-resourced. Here is one more myth that I think is really important. I put this right up there with the direct prep myth. And this is the small program myth. Many of you have seen cuts made at other institutions where the cut was based on program size. Oh, we only had 4 graduates last year, so we should cut this program. Well, that's interesting. But when you look at the data and you analyze the economics of college programs, what you find is many, many small programs are contribution positive. These things that look like dust specks on my chart, these 2 dots, for example, this dot, these are all small programs that are contribution positive, and many of them are actually comparable in contribution to much larger programs. You know, we look at here, and basically most of these programs are above $200 per credit hour in margin, and you can see there are many, many small dots on here that are at that level. And some of them, by the way, have pretty high cost per student credit hour, but the tuition's higher in some of those cases, so their margins are still healthy. So do keep this in mind, please. If you're going to make cuts, you just have to run the numbers and understand whether things you're about to cut are contribution positive. Otherwise, when you make the cut, your cost will go down. Unfortunately, your revenue will go down faster. So you'll end up in worse shape than you were to start with. And that's not including the cost of teaching out a program. So don't misunderstand. It's not that we don't believe you can cut costs. There are costs to be cut in higher ed. There are costs to be cut everywhere, including my own company, I'm sure. And, you know, being efficient, especially if you're a steward of public resources and parents' money and students' money, it's actually very important at an ethical level. But these kinds of across-the-board cuts, not a smart way to do it. And if you need to make cost reduction or to reduce costs, the way to do it is to look at courses and sections, as we were talking about earlier. There you can find a fair amount of money that is not attached to revenue. When you cut programs, you got to remember it's attached to revenue. And when you get rid of that cost, some of that revenue is going to go away too. And it doesn't take very much to offset the savings. So let me summarize for you. In September, Google searches for academic programs rose 56% year over year. That bodes extremely well for the future. And our cost per click, for those of you who are marketing using Google, only rose 1%. So that's under control right now. New student enrollment in bachelor's programs is flat, but master's is up 4%. And by the way, flat is good compared to where we were just a year or two ago. In 2023-24, computer science and business analytics had the highest annual growth since 2018-19. So very substantial growth in those programs over the last 5 years. Remember that bachelor's in biology go into 715 occupations, not 10. And that's true for almost all your programs. 80% of programs, fewer than 20% of students go into fields for which they're directly prepared. There is growing demand for skills in behavior analysis and AI. And benchmarking courses against peer institutions can help you manage your cost, revenue, and your financial vitality. It helps you identify opportunities to improve efficiency and redirect funds from over-resourced to under-resourced programs. Though I'm sure there's nobody going to raise their hand out there and say their program is over-resourced. But you can figure it out with benchmark information and begin to redirect that money either to under-resourced programs, or one of the things I think is essential is to fund growth opportunities, whether that's new programs or growing existing programs. That drives up the number of student credit hours, that drives down your unit cost, That opens up opportunities, for example, to be able to reduce price because your costs have come down. And you can deliver a unit of education at lower cost than you were able to before. So lots of things open up when you reduce your cost per student credit hour. So please feel free to contact us and we can show you some systems that'll help you do all this work. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of upcoming webinars we have. First is with our partner Fresh Start, a wonderful organization that helps women in need get their lives back together and become productive and self-sufficient, both for themselves and their families. Wonderful organization run by a client of ours who retired out in Phoenix. If you know of other nonprofits where our data could be useful, charities, I should say, let us know. We are happy to support those and let them have access to our systems so that they can direct students, for example, into academic programs. Typically here, they're short-term programs that lead to high-paying jobs. And then, of course, we have more demand trend webinars coming up in a month. We'll do community colleges on the 20th, and we'll do this bachelor's and above on November 21st. So I'll be wearing my turkey that day, not my pirate hat.
Bob, I just want to point out we have a little bit of a typo on the Fresh Start webinar. We are actually going to start it at 2 and end it at 3:30. Same date, November 14th.
Great. So I see a question about sharing charts. Yes, all of them will be up on our website. We'll let you know when they're there. And now is Wanel here? Marianne, I don't see him. Oh, there he is. If you all have a program you'd like us to look at, we're happy to do that in real time now. So if you want to enter a program in the chat, we'll take a look at it. We do this at the national level. It's just too slow if we have to switch geographies. It takes our system a little bit of time to do that, but we're happy to look at a program at the national level for you so you can see how attractive the market for that program may be.
And I am here, Bob. I am in a brand new apartment. I haven't figured out my lighting quite yet or the sound, so forgive me here.
All right, so we have a request for women, gender, and sexuality studies.
That sounds like 3 programs. Let me see.
I think we would call it gender studies. That's what it'll show up as in iPads, I think. So I don't know that we can, let's put it this way, Michelle, we're gonna go find gender studies, I believe it is, as a proxy for the program that you're mentioning here.
Just 1 second here. My Zoom settings are being weird.
So in a minute, we'll bring up what we call a program scorecard for that particular program.
Great.
Wait.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and just populate the scorecard here for the zip code. I saw women. I think it is just gender studies, but
I think it is. Pretty sure.
There's a women's studies.
I would go with.
It looks like it is going to be in this 05.
Yeah.
So actually, if I was working with you one-on-one, I might take a different look at this. Just 1 second. Let me populate this.
And we do have another one people want to look at as well.
Yeah, what is it? So I can load it up in the back.
Respiratory therapy.
Great.
And actually a second one, radiology sciences. I think that's going to be rad tech in our system. Oh, and the gender studies, it is at the graduate level, I think. So you'd need a different scoring rubric.
Okay, 1 second. Almost there.
So I know this seems like a long time, but in a moment, you're going to be able to see more data about this program than you could get from most of our competitors in 6 weeks.
All right, so here's what I see when I'm looking at the family of programs. It is looking like this 99 catch-all zip code is getting most of our data for this family. Just want to highlight that. But I do see this women's study here, second. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into this general studies one. I think this is a tricky one, Bob.
Yeah. Just keep in mind, sometimes when you're doing this work, it pays to look at the program that's got where the data is best aligned.
Mhm.
Because sometimes the way the data flows in, the particular program you're looking at may not pick it up.
Mhm.
Sense for everybody. So in this case, what we're looking for is a program that has a good sample of data in it that's
Great.
close to the field you exactly asked for. Fire away, Winell, in terms of analyzing this.
Yeah, so really quickly when I see this, the system is designed to give you colors to help you interpret what's going on, right? So when we're looking at this yellow by quadrant, we can see that yellow is going to be kind of middle of the curve here, 67th percentile, 50th percentile for both student demand and employment.
And quickly, that percentile compares this program to all 1,500 other programs in our system.
Exactly. And then what's driving the student demand here would be, I'm seeing some Google search volumes, 69th percentile Google search volume, 65th percentile new student enrollment in the market selected. But the program seems to be dropping in interest when we're looking at the Google search data, down 18,000 units. This 18,000 units is also reflected as a drop in 13% here. Completion volume slightly up. When I look over at the employment data, the main thing that I see here is the saturation. 0.4 job postings per graduate, 0.2. It doesn't mean that there are no jobs for this, right? So we're not saying, hey, look at this, don't offer this program, jobs don't exist, but we're gonna wanna really spend some time identifying, what those jobs are or what we think those jobs will be. Bob, anything you want to highlight here on the saturation?
Look at it, underemployed percent of graduates is a scary number. 37% of graduates end up in a job that doesn't require college. Wages are also not great.
Some interesting demographic data here. 81% female, 19% male. And then competitive intensity.
It's actually pretty low. And completion volumes are coming up. That median completions is up too. It is a very small program at most campuses, only 5 completions on average at the median, but that popped up nicely. Google cost per click is very low, so it's not a very competitive field. So that would be the best news about this, is that it's not yet particularly competitive.
Mm-hmm. I know this was emphasized as a master's program, but 34% of the enrollment in the market is in the bachelor's level for this, which is interesting. Only 4% of completions are actually at the master's level. So another interesting point there.
All right.
Okay.
So, Michelle, we're going to switch over and we're going to look at the programs that Kelly mentioned. Respiratory therapy, let's start there. And then time permitting, we'll look at RAD.
Is that an associate's program, Bob?
Yeah, respiratory therapy usually is.
Right. Well, I mean, the system will tell.
You're looking for the associate's program. I don't remember how high up in that can run.
Yeah, there's a tech and then there's a therapist.
Right.
So let's just look at the tech for now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 4-year group, 4-year colleges. So I would look at the respiratory therapy.
Okay.
Um,
And actually, do that. I think I have the wrong scoring rubric selected though.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Just want to double check and make sure though. Yep. So you'll notice here, the system is designed to, make sure you're constantly considering the right award level for a program. So because I have a different scoring rubric selected, you might see some negative points here in the degree fit. Yeah, you'll see here National Workforce Educational Attainment. This is essentially saying, sorry, we have the wrong program here, Bob.
You got it?
In 1 second.
All right, we're running out of time here.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What's the matter?
Hold on. It could be my internet. I just moved into a new apartment like hours ago. So it could just be my internet right now, Bob.
All right, well, we'll call it a day for today. I apologize. And Kelly, if you'd like to look at those two programs, just give us a ring. We're happy to walk you through both of them and show you what we've got. I will also just mention that in addition to all the numbers you just saw, our system is now able to produce a text report for you. So if you have somebody and you want to pass along something to them, you can get a one-page text summary of all those numbers in about 1.5 minutes out of our system. So it makes the whole thing much more approachable for a casual user, especially for one who may not love to see 250 numbers on a single page and try and interpret them. So the text is there. It's easy to use, and it's a wonderful complement to the deeper analysis you can do with a scorecard. Thank you, everybody. Very much appreciate taking out your time out of your day to join us today.